Hello, everybody, and welcome to Atheist Sunday School, your one-stop shop for everything Atheist Sunday and school. And boy, do we have a show for you today. Today we are covering Jonah.
The whole book of Jonah.
The whole book of Jonah.
Yeah.
But it,
1 through 4.
Yeah.
We didn't say Obadiah 1 last week.
Right, I guess, because it just would have been
Your intros have
Obadiah.
sucked this week, guys.
Hey,
It's
you
so
know
out of
what?
sync.
You know what? These are some very short books.
It's confusing.
But we are joined by Landon Noll.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on your time zone and latitude from your friendly secular astronomer. And I'm here to do some Jonah disobedience fishy stories, a tall fishtail. But you know, it's not. It's at least a bit more substantive than that previous book of Obadiah, which, if they were like having the list of canon and they were trying to decide what fits in the Apocrypha, I suspect that Obadiah was one of those books that just barely made the cut, which probably, you know, I think there's probably a couple of Apocrypha books that might replace Obadiah and be a little bit more interesting.
I mean, absolutely more interesting. No doubt about that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's a classic story that we're going to be reading.
Yeah, absolutely classic.
Even though it's only a little part of this whole you know, Jonah's punishment and prayer thing.
Yeah. And you know, because it's the first of the month, we gotta give away a T-shirt. If you are a patron of $10 or more, you are offered
You can get a T-shirt like this.
Yeah, just like the one that Landon has. You get a T-shirt.
Yeah,
so,
you can get any of the T-shirts. So many. There's so many T-shirts.
Yeah, primarily because Landon kept winning, and we had to keep making new shirts. So,
and he may win today too.
Yeah, he might.
Well, then why don't we
spinny wheelie?
Thingies.
There it goes. All right.
Who's the winner?
Carlos.
Carlos.
Congratulations.
I wish we had like some background music. Like, yeah, Carlos, you just won yourself a fancy T-shirt.
And I'll be getting in contact with Carlos about, you know, which shirt he wants.
All right.
All that, yeah.
So we're going to be reading the book of Jonah. I have the King James Version of the Bible.
You know, I have the English Standard Version. It's over here on the side because right now I have something else going on.
We also have...
do you? It looks like a lot of books are out.
Yeah.
We also have
and
Landon's version of the Bible.
I have the New American Standard Bible, A.J. Holman Company Reference Edition. Unlike those things, this is actually a reference edition. Division of J.B. Lippot Company, and possibly copyright God, but that's to be adjudicated in copyright court.
Yes, we also have the New King James Version, the Jewish Publication Society version. We have Eerdman's commentary on the Bible.
We have Robert Alter's translation and commentary on the Hebrew Bible.
We have the NIV and Old Testament survey.
Yeah, New Interpreter's Bible, Old Testament survey.
Yeah.
I think you said New Testament.
I said old.
Did you? I think you...
It's okay.
Okay, whatever. Okay. We also have from Joanna M. Hoyt. This is from the Evangelical Exegetical Commentary Series, Amos, Jonah, and Micah. And we have from Hans Walter Wolf, Obadiah and Jonah from, you know, I'm still not 100% certain on how this commentary series is. I think it was like the Continental Commentary Series, and I think that got integrated into the Hermenia series. I'm not super sure. But anyways, yeah, as you may have noticed, we have a lot of books.
Yeah, we also have the Septuagint.
Yeah, we do. We do have the Septuagint. And I did check it. I wanted to check on the word that was used for fish there, because sometimes it's translated as whale.
Yes.
So I was checking at least the Greek. And I don't know what the Hebrew is. I'm sure we're going to learn that from Alter or from one of these authors here. Now, the Greek word that's used is ketos, or I guess ketos, which that's the root form. And it would be any sea monster or big fish. and that's the definition that's used in Homer and Herodotus. Secondarily, it has also been translated as an abyss or hollow. And of course, since Greek is not the original language, maybe I'm not sure how helpful that's going to be, but at least from the Greek, I can tell you that. We'll get to the Hebrew when we can. Although here, and don't worry, Chris, I'll get to that in just a second. So Jason, you asked about the hourglass. It is, of course, October. It is spooky season.
Yeah. Ooh. Will we finish the show by the time the sand falls? Yeah, probably not.
No.
I think it's like 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, it's not very long at all.
Definitely not. But, you've got a lot of books to read there.
I do. Okay, so one thing, I just want to get a few things out of the way.
All right, you only have until the hourglass to get those few things out of the way. Just kidding.
Shut up. So, one thing that pretty much every commentator agrees on is the overall unity of the work. Like, aside from a couple verses and possibly Jonah gets swallowed up by the fish, right? And then he recites the psalm. And the psalm, while it may or may not be original, but the thing is the rest of it doesn't really make sense without it. So it would make more sense if it was original. So aside from like a couple verses, it wouldn't. Yeah, aside from a couple verses, it's a general unity. So
I do not know how to spell oxymoron.
I know you don't.
Spelled oxymoron.
Yeah, well, I really don't know how to spell it.
Well, you can figure that out. But so let's.
I'll just say it to Justin. That's a good oxymoron right there. A 10-minute hourglass. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yes, Chris is quite bad at spelling.
Yeah, to an inepting degree.
So pretty much every commentator agrees on that. And now let's talk about the possible date. So the date for this has also been hotly debated. One of the things that's been noted also by every single commentator, and I'm just going to give the abridged version from Erdman's here.
I was so close. I just had an I there. I didn't need the I there. Dang, for oxymoron. Thank you. Thank you, 7 Mile Dog.
All right, so while Jonah is often dated by scholars to the post-exilic period, the circumstances of this book's authorship are largely unknown. The story plunges in with little explanation. God summons Jonah to a task, reminding us of the commissioning of prophets such as Jeremiah or Isaiah. As it happens, a prophet called Jonah ben Amittai appears in another story in 2 Kings 14:25. There he announces the restoration of northern Israel's borders several decades before the Assyrians finally destroyed the northern kingdom in the 7th century. If we assume that our Jonah is the same person, an Israelite prophet, then it is clear that he has a difficult task, since Nineveh is a city of powerful Assyrians who have incorporated Jonah's own country into their empire. So this is something that not every commentator unanimously agrees on whether or not they're talking about that same Jonah. And yes, Matthew, you point out that Jonah does mean dove. In fact, the name, the whole name that he's given here, Jonah, son of Amittai, I think it means dove of faithfulness or something like that. So now we can talk. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the date, just to kind of get that one out of the way. But yeah, there is a lot of debate on this. I should have some water.
Yes, you should.
Seriously.
And while you're having water, you can remind our viewers that there's a lot of water in this story. Ho, 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 ho.
That was very good.
Oh.
Good transition there, buddy.
Yeah. Wow, you're really
Man,
bad at this right now.
The phlegm, dude, the phlegm. That was really
real.
bad. All right. So the date has been ranging from the period of Jeroboam all the way through to like the 3rd century. I think the 3rd century would definitely be too late, although that is the last. That's the latest possible date is the 3rd century BCE, because if you remember, we have references to Jonah in the Wisdom of Ben Sira.
Yes, we do.
He lists a few prophets, and one of them is Jonah. So we have a can't talk right now. We have a latest possible date right there. That's the latest. I don't think it's that late, but that is the latest possible one. And from earliest, this is where you get just so much disagreement. So I was reading through Wolf's and Hoyt's commentaries the other night, and on date, it like Hoyt seems kind of hesitant to give a date, but for Wolf, he seems to. It's definitely post-exilic for him. In fact, for most scholars, it's a post-exilic work, but because it's so short and it lacks some critical details, we can't say much. Now, it does call Nineveh the great city, and now the way it's used from the commentators' perspectives, that has often given people the idea that this was to portray Nineveh as a good thing, as a good city, meant some kind of restoration, or it meant that it wasn't evil anymore, because, of course, earlier on it was. So calling it the great city.
The designation of great city was talking about its size and its prominence in the area, not simply that God was pleased with it.
Essentially,
I would
yes.
also interpret it that way.
Right. So let's talk. So one of the things that have lent to the dating of this, there are a whole bunch of different methods scholars use to date a text, right? And one of them is the language. So when this is where you have, I think this is just kind of a consequence of time here, but so Wolf lists off a whole bunch of words for things that weren't used, first of all, anywhere else in the Old Testament, and then just didn't pop up in other literature until much later. And then he brings up the theology being closer to universalism, which would mean post-exilic as well. Now, I do happen to agree with that one, but of course, once we actually read through the book, we'll have better ideas of that. Although he points out a bunch of words, like the specific words that are used for sailor, appoint. There's a verb that's used for laborious work. There's a specific numeral. Apparently, this form wasn't used before. There's a one for ship, one for think, a word for message, a word for taste. So he comes up with a whole bunch of ones that don't pop up until much later in texts. Although Hoyt, when she's talking about this, she does point out that most of these aren't actually, because the argument that Wolf is making is that these are Aramaisms, that they came by later and they showed influence from another language, right? So the argument that's used by Hoyt, and apparently this was based on a pretty extensive book that was published by, I'm actually not sure who, because when she was citing this, oh, here it is. Okay, Jonah by Landis, apparently.
Landis.
By Landis.
That's the Roman equivalent of Landon.
So apparently that scholar did a huge deep dive into the possible Aramaisms, and pretty much came to the conclusion that almost all of them, except for one, were not actually Aramaisms. So that might just be a consequence of time, because it seems like the later commentaries also agree that they aren't Aramaisms. However, I want to point out that Alter still does consider them Aramaisms.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I actually, let me check when was that? Landis one published? I'm not actually sure.
Long ago, in a distant land.
Yeah, that's exactly then, actually. Long ago in a distant land. It says it right there.
I thought it was a long time ago in a distant galaxy, but whatever.
So I do think that the date, considering even without the Aramaisms, Wolf goes over some potential motifs that are really similar to like Hellenistic ones. And I don't think you could say that, you could make that link, but it's not really necessary. And although I definitely think it's post-exilic, but it's hard to say more than that, honestly, from what I've read. And now we can get to the best part of the discussion.
The best part.
Or the most annoying, perhaps.
Or the most annoying.
The genre.
Wow. Well, as Jason pointed out, the great city is more commonly a reference to Jerusalem. It's a reason to point to satire.
Yeah. I definitely think it's in the realm of satire. Now, every single commentator here, they do show some, like when they consider a potential genre, of course, the best way to try to prove something, or not prove it, but the best way to demonstrate something is to try to disprove it, in a sense.
Yeah.
Because it's how you test things. So, I'll get to Hoyt's commentary in a bit, but
well, you see, the Book of Jonah was actually just a very long stand-up act, and you don't get that because you don't have the timing that the original comedian used when he delivered it as a stand-up act.
Yes, obviously it was a stand-up act. Thank you, Ruben. You have solved everything. So, the NIB does pretty much say, like, we can't really, like, there are a whole lot of different proposals for the date, but we can't really settle on one of those. Either way, for genre, yeah, he lists a possible.
Who does?
I should do this. Or no, this is actually she. Sorry, Phyllis Tribble.
And that's in the NIB
yes.
survey.
Yes. So, she lists a large amount of proposed genres this could be.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Well,
let me see that.
There's a whole list there.
Introduction. Yeah. So proposed classifications include allegory, didactic story, fable, fairy tale, folktale, historical account, legend, marken, masal, midrash, myth, novella, parable, parody, prophetic tale, saga, satire, sermon, short story, and tragedy.
Yeah.
That's a list.
It is a list. And she only concentrates on like 4 or 5 of those possibilities.
Yeah, folktale, parable, satire, and midrash.
Yeah. I don't think it'd make great sense as a midrash, but I think from the reading that I've done and from some of the arguments that are made by Wolf, that it is likely some form of satire. I think it's a lot closer to Esther. Of course, the one big difference that I see being the use of the name of God.
Yeah, none of that is very secular in Esther otherwise.
Yeah, Esther's very secular. At least, linguistically speaking. So so
there's some arguments that are put forward for it being satire here.
Yeah.
The name Jonah, son of Amittai, meaning dove, son of faithfulness, where he descends rather than soaring.
Yeah.
In boarding a ship to Tarshish in the west, he takes the opposite direction from Nineveh in the east.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, there's so much irony in this that it definitely reminds me of Esther. Absolutely. The only genre that wasn't listed was gangsta rap.
Well, maybe in the original Hebrew it rhymes. So there's puns.
Yeah.
Like puns with sell and nasal, shade and to save. But there are problems with it being a satire. So this author says, although satiric elements mark Jonah, whether they confirm it as satire opens up unsettling problems. First, between authorial intention and reader response, and then among different readers. What authorial indicators secure satire is the genre of the book. Do generally agreed upon satiric features become a license for inventing others? To what extent is satire in the eye of the beholder? For example, some readers find Jonah's prayer inside the fish an expression of genuine piety, but others deem it a distortion and farce. Some readers chuckle to picture animals clothed in sackcloth and sitting upon ashes, but others see pathos and poignancy. How much satire does the book yield, and how much do readers contribute? Jonah may have both less and more levity and gravitas than readers intend.
Yes, so do not underestimate Jonah, and also do not overestimate Jonah.
Well, I wonder what does the Answers in Jonah group think about Jonah being literally it happened, right?
Right. So let's talk about that. So because so I think that the genre would fall under some kind of satire, right? Now I don't think it was meant to be literal. And here's something that is really amusing to me. So, in Hoyt's text, she points out a lot of things that seem like they could be historically accurate, right? And yeah, I mean that's fair. However, at the very end, I'm gonna, I should have actually found the part where she says, I'm going to see if I can find the quote.
Well, while you're looking for that, Tribble's conclusion about the genre is that it has multiple genres. So, I mean, that's entirely possible. You can have an action-adventure, sci-fi, fantasy, romance, for example. That's
Star Wars?
Yeah,
Yes.
Star Wars.
Star Wars. Right?
Could the book have been amended? That is, they had a basic story, and then people could have embellished it and added the prayer, as a bit of piety and so forth.
Sure.
Because it has its mixed modes, it's been tampered with.
So I did find the quote, and so yeah, she argues heavily that a lot of the stuff in the book is historical. And here's the quote that really killed me at the end of it, in a good way. Don't worry. That is, it brought on death. If one is able to set aside the difficult-to-believe fish incident, the evidence points to a historical, non-fictional account of the prophet Jonah.
Oh, yeah.
If you're able to set aside the whole fish thing, hey, it could be very historical. I'm like, hey, the fish thing in Jonah, pretty big part of the story.
It's basically the story.
I mean, at least, now when we're looking at it, yeah. Because, I mean, a good chunk of it
the
takes
major
place.
event
It
in
is.
the story.
It is the major event. So, even though there are a lot of things that very well could be historical, which might help with finding a date for writing, calling it an actual historical text would be improper. And there is there's quite a bit of stuff in here. So, anyways, I think some of the things that are pointed out are Nineveh's population size. Here's some stuff about the great city comment, right? So Jonah's historicity is often doubted because of the description of Nineveh as great, is often interpreted as a reference to Nineveh either being the capital city or a physically very large city. Nineveh was neither during Jonah's days. However, an examination of the word great reveals that it is not used elsewhere to refer to a capital city. And I guess the specific word that's used there, the form of it. And while the word can refer to physically large size, as in Genesis and Deuteronomy, such a meaning is not required. And since the size of the walled portion, Nineveh during Jonah's days was not large, such a translation is not warranted. There are two other translations that are within the semantic domain of the word great and fit the context exceedingly well. First, the word could refer to Nineveh simply as important. That would be fair. Nineveh, though not the capital, certainly was an important city in Assyria during this time. The description in 3:3 of Nineveh being a great city to God or gods could also support this interpretation. Such a clarifying description could indicate that Nineveh was either important because many gods were worshipped there, or it could indicate that it was important to Yahweh because of the role Nineveh and Assyria would play in Yahweh's exile of Israel. So, if you remember one of the big theologies of the time, it would be that they were sent to pretty much bring God's judgment. But of course, then they would be judged themselves, which that's a whole other moral issue.
So more details about Nineveh. There's actually a pretty concise explanation here. As the object of Jonah's mission, Nineveh poses interpretive challenges. According to the Table of Nations, Nimrod, the mighty hunter, founded the city, Genesis 10:8-12. Zephaniah condemned it for arrogance and forecast its destruction shortly before that event in 612 BCE, Zephaniah 2:13-15. Nahum assailed it as the city of bloodshed, Nahum 3:1. Described its evil in great detail and rejoiced in its destruction. From this prophetic perspective, the historical Nineveh was evil incarnate. It justly deserved its fate. In decisive ways, the book
weird. I thought Nimrod was okay. Whatever.
In decisive ways, the book of Jonah counters this portrait. 1. Yahweh, the very God whose name Zephaniah and Nahum prophesied, repeatedly describes Nineveh as the great city, and the narrator even declares it at one point as a city great to God. Although Yahweh once ascribes evil to it, never is it called the evil city. Indeed, God recognizes that it turns from evil. 2. The books of Zephaniah and Nahum denounce Nineveh and see its destruction as the will of Yahweh. But the book of Jonah shows no hatred towards the city. Jonah's own quarrel is not with the city, but with God. Unlike those prophetic oracles of judgment, the story shows compassion for Nineveh and sees its salvation as the will of Yahweh. 3. Zephaniah and Nahum concentrate exclusively upon the violence of Nineveh. Although the book of Jonah refers to the evil and the violence of the city, it neither details nor dwells on those horrors. Instead, it emphasizes the religious sensitivities of the city. The people of Nineveh believe in God, engage in acts of penance, and repent. The repenting of God then confirms these deeds as genuine. 4. Zephaniah and Nahum describe the historical Nineveh. Jonah depicts the legendary Nineveh. Beyond the identity of name and size, the two cities meet briefly but profoundly at the place of evil. Then they depart, radically and profoundly, at the place of repentance. As a result, prophetic imagination does not offer two attitudes towards one Nineveh. Rather, it dares to offer two Ninevehs, and thus to relativize historical certitude.
So you can actually...
Have we even brought up the book of Jasher before?
it was mentioned as, I think, a source in Genesis, right, for one of the lists. There was a list in there that said that the information was coming from the book of Jasher, I think.
I think so.
Yeah. I don't think we need that one anymore.
Well, then let me just flip to the next book in here.
Fair enough. All right. So, I think we covered all of the
preliminary.
All the preliminary stuff. I know that we're half an hour into this, but I knew that would be, at least an interesting conversation on genre.
And
Go ahead,
I'll
Landon.
have some at the end of chapter 1, some commentary on comedy or use of the book of Jonah. So
fantastic. And you know what?
At the end,
guys, the hourglass. It hit the thing a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
it
It
did.
was really 10 minutes.
What
it
a
really was.
bummer.
We started it at 3 minutes.
So
or
sad.
and it ended at 13 minutes. I was
Okay, so
sort of paying attention to that.
So, Book of Jonah, chapter 1. Now the word of the Lord came unto Jonah the son of Amittai, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry against it, for their wickedness is come up before me. But Jonah rose up to flee unto Tarshish from the presence of the Lord, and went down to Joppa. And he found a ship going to Tarshish, so he paid the fare thereof, and went down to it to go with them unto Tarshish from the presence of the Lord.
Yeah, so this first little section here. So yet we still have to await the continuation for when all is said and done. The first scene has no separate function of its own. It acts as preparation for the story as a whole. Fair enough. If we try to discover where the writer came from, we may notice that he is silent about Gath Hepher, Jonah's home, according to 2 Kings 14:25, which is in the Galilean mountains. But he mentions Joppa, the port most easily accessible from Jerusalem, though certainly not from Gath Hepher. In considering the author's period, it is worth mentioning that Tarshish ships are hardly mentioned at all in any securely datable text earlier than Ezekiel, and that the formula for the confronting event of God's word also only becomes current coin from the 6th century onwards.
But the Lord sent out a great wind into the sea, and there was a mighty tempest in the sea, so that the ship was like to be broken. Then the mariners were afraid, and cried every man unto his God, and cast forth the wares that were in the ship into the sea, to lighten it of them. But Jonah was gone down into the sides of the ship, and he lay and was fast asleep. So the shipmaster came to him, and said unto him, What meanest thou, O sleeper? Arise, call upon thy God, if so be that God will think upon us, that we perish not. And they said every one to his fellow, Come, and let us cast lots, that we may know for whose cause this evil is upon us. So they cast lots, and the lot fell upon Jonah.
Yeah, of course, casting lots. A good, what's it called? A good source of divination.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing, yeah.
Yeah. They're divining who's responsible for the storm that's throwing them all about.
Yeah.
Then said they unto him, Tell us, we pray thee, for whose cause this evil is upon us? What is thine occupation? And whence comest thou? What is thy country? And of what people art thou? And he said unto them, I am a Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, which hath made the sea and the dry land.
I like how he only answers that last question. Or the
Yeah.
fourth question, yeah.
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 Then were the men exceedingly afraid, and said unto him, What hast thou done? Why hast thou done this?
You know, here's something kind of interesting. So in the Old Testament, Hebrew is found especially often on the lips of foreigners, or is used towards foreigners, especially Egyptians and Philistines. In our passage, the word certainly does not have a sociological meaning. It is used in a purely ethnological sense. Yeah, fair enough.
For the men knew that he fled from the presence of the Lord, because he had told them. Then said they unto him, What shall we do unto thee, that the sea may be calm unto us? For the sea wrought, and was tempestuous. And he said unto them, Take me up, and cast me forth into the sea, so shall the sea be calm unto you. For I know that for my sake this great tempest is upon you. So he's just like, yeah, throw me in the ocean. Or probably the Mediterranean, right?
Yeah, Jonah simply means that if they get rid of his jinxing presence on board, the storm will cease to pound the ship. The crew, however, may well have construed this as casting an offering to appease the raging sea god.
Nevertheless,
I too am a raging sea god.
I'm sure you are. Nevertheless, the men rowed hard to bring it to the land, but they could not, for the sea wrought and was tempestuous against them. Wherefore they cried unto the Lord, and said, We beseech thee, O Lord, we beseech thee, let us not perish for this man's life, and lay not upon us innocent blood. For thou, O Lord, hast done as it pleased thee. So they took up Jonah and cast him forth into the sea, and the sea ceased from her raging. Then the men feared the Lord exceedingly, and offered a sacrifice unto the Lord, and made vows. Now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. And that is the end of chapter 1. Hey, if you're enjoying the stream so far, give us a like, comment, share it with your friends, family, neighbors, mariners.
Yeah, the mariners.
Submariners.
So we have accounts of naval ships. At least I'm familiar with the stuff from the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries, and those accounts typically show that the sailors in general were sort of a superstitious lot. And so calamities would be things that they would look for, but they were sort of something irrational things that they would do in response to things that were seemingly out of their control. This book of Jonah, and in particular this passage book of Jonah, has developed a superstition amongst that time of a Jonah being on board when a regular sea voyage was experiencing lots of problems, calamity stuff. The thought was, well, there must be a Jonah aboard, and they would kind of try to seek out stuff. Now, they wouldn't necessarily go to this process of casting lots and finding somebody, but there were people that would sort of be rumored because they might be the wrong religion, they might have done something, confessed something to somebody that they did something evil back in the port or something of that form. Any kind of little thing the crew would seize upon, declare someone to be a Jonah, and there are accounts of basically these Jonahs being what we call scragged. That is, at some point they would just disappear, no longer be on the ship. And
I wonder what happened to those guys.
and so if it's a matter of like there's a great storm, but more than that, for example, that there's something physically happens to the ship and it needs to get repaired, but they fear having a Jonah on board. Certainly, certain people, certain ethnicities were sometimes thought of as being Jonahs as well. But that process, this process they're talking about, of the crew deciding that the problems of the voyage must be a fault of somebody, and to get rid of that somebody and everything will be fixed, is actually sadly a common theme that has occurred throughout the centuries. Alas, of course, those accounts don't call for some great fish to come and swallow the person up in quote saving them. Now, from the point of view of the crew on this ship of this story, they probably, even if they saw that a great fish swallowed Jonah, they'd probably think, well, God that's particularly God of the sea is killing that person, so
right,
he deserved it, and so forth. This notion of surviving is the unlikely bit.
Yeah.
In that sense, another thing that this chapter does that a lot of Christians do is this 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the whale as sort of a allegory for Jesus dying and being resurrected 3 days later. That's that people point back to that and say, see, this is a prophecy showing thing, right?
Yeah. So one of the things I want to say about the 3 days and 3 nights kind of thing. So many events in biblical narrative are said to occur in precisely this time span. What is distinctive here is the emphatic addition of 3 nights to 3 days, inviting us to envisage Jonah's. Okay, yeah, and I guess it.
Yeah,
so
you know what?
For a
There's
while,
some
right?
details
Not a
in
short
here.
amount of time.
There's some details in here. The particular statement of time may undoubtedly have been prompted by myths and sagas The black moon, or new moon, rests for 3 days in heaven before the sharp sword of the moon's sickle axe, as a reminder that the monster by whom the moon was devoured was slit up from within. The messenger of the gods seeks for help 3 days and 3 nights after Inanna had descended into the land of no return. Heracles sprang into the mouth of the monster, killed it from within, and some say emerges victor from the dead beast's body after only 3 days. Our narrator mentions this period of time because it is relatively long.
It's not too long and it's not too short.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get things done in that amount of time, right? Or you don't have to like long for things if they're 3 days from now.
Yeah.
So it's an amount of time. The thing about the fish here is, because it says that Yahweh appointed this fish or set out the fish, or the word that's used in the Septuagint at least is prosetaxen, or ordered. He ordered the fish. So it's God saving Jonah. So although it could seem like, as Landon pointed out, that the people on the ship would be like, see, the sea gods got him. He was bad juju. Yep. Not that.
And the thing, of course, that's kind of incredulous about the bit is that that obviously somebody could they be swallowed by a large fish, or let's say a whale, right? Is one of the common things.
Yes.
And there is debate about whether or not a large whale would want to swallow something, given that the large creatures typically are going for krill and that sort of stuff. But certainly being in a stomach of a fish with the acid digesting and the gases that would be there, certainly one would suffocate. So you have to sort of then go and say, well, it was a miracle of God that somehow God preserved Jonah in the belly of this fish. You have to go to that spot. I don't know what the quote that the equivalent of the answers in Jonah would do. Maybe they want to go and build a large fish in Kentucky and have people go into the belly of the fish to see.
Yeah, go live in the belly of the fish. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a 3-day thing, so it's kind of pricey.
There where you can live for book it for 3 days and 2 nights.
Well, now Jonah is literally in the belly of the beast.
Yes.
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 And we
it's an odd. I would say it's an odd thing also that verse 17 is not the first verse of chapter 2.
It is.
It depends on. So it depends on if you're reading the Hebrew or not. It's one of those where it's the one verse removed, I guess.
Yeah. Here it is the first verse of chapter 2. But now we're getting into chapter 3.
What?
Or chapter 2. Yeah.
Yeah, chapter 2.
We're getting into chapter 2. And Wolf says that an interpolator has inserted the psalm at the point where the story describes the lengths of Jonah's stay in the fish's belly.
Yeah, I mean, Wolf, he also commented that earlier on, but as I added, he also points out that it's like it wouldn't... I think there's a certain verse in this chapter that was later added. I'm pretty sure all the commentators agree on that.
Mm-hmm.
I would have to go back and check, like in the introduction of Wolf's commentary on it. It's in there. But he does point out that there's one specific verse in here that's probably a later addition, but the psalm itself would not be, like as a unit, I guess.
Yeah, so as a psalm, there's not a whole lot to say about it because it's a psalm, but we can say that there are some references to Sheol.
Yep, which is very interesting to me.
But when they're referenced, they are figurative language. They are like being near to death, generically.
Gotcha.
And other stuff will pop up as we get to it. But
see, I would have thought so one of the things that was pointed out by pretty much every commentator was that Jonah doesn't really look great in this book.
Yeah.
He in some ways he's kind of a fool. So I was thinking, maybe when he's saying like, oh, like I'm in Sheol and whatnot, maybe he's just maybe he just thinks he's in Sheol.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know, probably not, but I thought that would be at least funny.
So at the end of verse 2, I will get into this.
Okay. So shall I begin then?
Yeah.
All right, great. Chapter 2. Then Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the belly of the fish, saying, I called out to the Lord out of my distress, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. It's really interesting how they change person there.
Yeah, it is. Now, Wolf...
Not person, but tense, sorry.
Yeah, Wolf here says he didn't intend this to be understood as a hymn of thanksgiving. And that emerges from the circumstance in 2b, picking up from 1b, that he explicitly stresses that the prayer was spoken out of the belly of the fish. And this indication of place is immediately explained at the beginning of the psalm as meaning that it is a place of distress, indeed the belly of the underworld, out of the fish belly. It corresponds to a number of different terms, but it's therefore intended, first of all, to bring out Jonah's complete helplessness, and so at the same time, his readiness to turn at last to the God from whom he has tried to escape. So this, according to Wolf, this supports a satire position. Yeah.
For you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the floods surrounded me. All your waves and your billows passed over me.
So I do want to note some commentary from Alter as well. From the beginning of the poem, he says, as is the regular practice in biblical narrative, a poem is inserted. That was originally composed for another context. Compare Hannah's Thanksgiving Psalm in 1 Samuel 2, 1-10. The poem is a psalm of thanksgiving, exhibiting many of the formulas and metaphors of that genre. It fits the narrative situation somewhat imperfectly because, while it is introduced as Jonah's prayer from the belly of the fish, it is not actually a plea for deliverance, but the rendering of thanks to God for having already delivered the speaker, as the opening line at once makes clear. The image of almost drowning in the depths of the sea as a metaphor for near death, often because of grave illness, is conventional in Thanksgiving psalms. But here it's made to apply literally to Jonah's desperate, aqueous plight. Not surprisingly, the inserted psalm makes no mention of being swallowed by a fish, because the maws of a gigantic fish do not figure in Thanksgiving psalms. Nevertheless, the poem does incorporate several relevant points of connection with Jonah's story. So Alter and Wolf are in agreement about it being an interpolation.
So it looks, because there's some stuff here which you can see why, like, okay, so let's say it was placed there later. You could see why they would, right? Because you have the belly of Sheol, considering being the belly of the fish. Mm-hmm. You have the heart of the seas stuff. Now, it looks like later they get a bit more vague, so I kind of get it. But it's hard to think that at least part of this wasn't... or like if you did have an original psalm on its own, right? Mm-hmm. Like they could have taken that psalm, or maybe the general outline even, but then written around it to kind of fit it to the story, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, that might be the case.
Because there's some pretty specific stuff in there. And while we have like plenty of imagery of, like at least throughout the Bible, we have plenty of weird imagery, right? In Psalms. However, having sea imagery isn't used that often in Psalms.
Right. because they're not a real major seafaring people.
Yeah. Like you get some of them, right? You get some, but it's not really that much.
Yeah, but there wasn't like a massive Jerusalem navy.
Right. That's what we should create, except we should do it for the past. So
Oh yeah,
we should go back in time and do it.
sure.
No, we should go.
Well, getting the ships up to Jerusalem from the Mediterranean would be an interesting feat.
We'll give it a shot. All right. So anyways, he continues on. Then I said, this, okay, so yeah, this is kind of weird. I think this might be where something was cut off. So you have, so it says like, then Jonah prayed to the Lord, saying this thing. And then it's all in the first person, right? Like, I did this, and then you for me, and all that stuff. And then this, and so in this prayer, is he saying
that? Well, actually, continue on.
Okay, yeah. Then I said, I am driven away from your sight, yet I shall again look upon your holy temple. So
where it says said, Alter translates this as and I thought.
Well, I mean, either way, why would he say during his prayer, then I said, or then I thought?
And I thought.
Oh,
You flung me into the deep, and so on, and I thought, I am banished from before your eyes. Yet again,
I guess
will I look on your holy temple.
Well,
right?
okay, you have
it's
that.
Literally
and,
like
then is just weird.
Then is weird. The phrasing that you have there is very strange.
Fair enough.
Alter does not comment on the exact wording there.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, in my translation, it is weird. Yeah. Then I said, or even if it was then I thought. Then yeah, he has these hopes for seeing the temple again and whatnot.
Okay, I said is also used as an introduction in Psalm 31:22, 41:4, 116:11, Isaiah 38:10, Lamentations 3:54. It's a very common formula.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, the then threw me off.
Mm-hmm.
The waters closed in over me to take my life. The deep surrounded me. Weeds were wrapped about my head at the roots of the mountains.
Yeah, so
The roots of the mountains.
This is an interesting.
I guess that's at the bottom of the sea. Like if a person in the ancient world is like, where are the roots of those mountains? And everyone's like, I guess they'd be under them, right?
Right. Now, this author, Hoyt, notes that as Jonah was sinking, he became entangled in water plants, likely seaweed. There's much discussion concerning what type of plant life is depicted with the word water plants. It is often translated as seaweed or simply as weeds. This is the same word used in Exodus for the Sea of Reeds. The connection led the medieval rabbi Rashi to explain this as Yahweh taking Jonah on a tour of the world while he was in the big fish. And at this point, Yahweh showed Jonah where the Israelites crossed the Reed Sea. Another medieval Jewish commentator, Kimchi, explains the description of the reeds being wrapped around as referring to them being wrapped around the fish's head, not Jonah's.
What is... Okay, well, I mean...
It says, I thought the text says my head, but is the Hebrew?
I mean, what I'm guessing is that it does say my head, and that since these are, I guess, here's the thing about rabbis.
The strong image of the head entrammelled in seaweed amplifies the conventional metaphor of sinking into the depths. Right. The clauses rhythmically compact and assonant in the Hebrew. Suf havush laroshi. An effect the translation tries to emulate when he said, weed was bound round my head.
Okay. Here's the thing about those early rabbis and rabbinical texts in general. They they really stretch things out. Like, if they're trying to interpret something, they will really, really try to interpret it. They're going to try, in fact, too hard, I think, to interpret it.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets ridiculous. And that's why I think that the alphabet of Ben Sira was supposed to be a parody, because it tried really, really hard to an absurd degree. So the commentaries you're getting from them might give you some insight into, the only thing that's going to give you insight is to how they thought about things. So that's all that's going to help. All that's going to help you with, because they were smart enough to notice that there were issues in these texts, but their explanations were just kind of garbage.
Yeah,
a lot of the time. So, anyways, where were we here? Yeah, the roots of the mountains.
Wrapped around my head. Verse 6. No.
Yeah, so wrapped around my head at the roots of the mountains, I went down to the land whose bars closed upon me forever.
This may refer to the gates of Sheol.
Interesting.
Sheol was believed to be an actual location under all of creation, so sinking to the very bottom of creation, Jonah has, in his worldview, reached the doors of the underworld.
I guess, yeah. This would be a terrible journey, though.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't really be concentrating on all that stuff. You'd see it. You might be able to recall it later, but if you're in the belly of a fish or a whale, you're not going to really concentrate on that.
Yeah, how
I
do you
think
know
this is
that there were
pre-whale.
bars under there? Was there like windows on the side of the fish or something, or what's?
It's the magic whale bus.
Yes, and I think Matthew, to answer your question, I think in Canaanite mythology, part of the ball cycle or part of the ball myth is the destruction of Yam, which was the sea. I think that's part of it. I think we've covered that a good amount of times. Yeah.
Why don't you continue? You said that
whose bars closed upon me forever, yet you brought up my life from the pit, O Lord my God. When my life was fainting away, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came to you into your holy temple. Those who pay regard to vain idols forsake their hope of steadfast love.
So, I want to note that Alter's translation of this is those who look to vaporous lies. And the phrase replicates a phrase that occurs in Psalm 31, verse 7.
Okay, well, vain would make sense there, and vaporous. And, I mean, idols, that's a bit more specific than lies.
Yeah, but I also want to note that the latter part of that verse, the wording in the Hebrew is cryptic and has encouraged diverse interpretations. The least strained, which this translation seeks to register, is that the idol worshippers, clearly the referent of those who look to vaporous lies, at some point will be compelled to recognize that the purported deities whom they seek mercy are mere illusions, and they will abandon their futile worship. The possessive pronoun there in Hebrew, merely a suffix, attached to mercy, would refer to the idolaters. In all this, as both medieval and modern commentators have noted, there is some relevance to Jonah and the sailors. Each of the mariners calls upon his own God, but to no avail. After hearing Jonah's words, they employ Yahweh instead, who in the end saves them.
You know, I think, because my interpretation of that verse is like, so those who pay regard to vain idols forsake their hope for steadfast love. I'm thinking that's because they're not worshiping Yahweh. They really can't hope for steadfast love. And therefore, to me at least, that says that they had the potential to be, saved, so to speak, but they haven't been because they pay regard to vain idols.
Yeah.
That was my interpretation.
In my text, the vain is, they said, alternate for the word vain in vain idols is empty vanities.
Yep, that works, I guess. But I, with the voice of thanksgiving, will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed I will pay. Salvation belongs to the Lord.
So one of the conventions of Thanksgiving psalms is to announce thanks or acclamation at the end of the poem.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So that is a sign of it being a Thanksgiving psalm. Though I will note that Hoyt interprets this as a lament, and
Whatever, Hoyt.
it's not. I don't see it as a lament.
I don't see it as a lament either.
I think this is like, it's definitely closer. It ends off as a Thanksgiving psalm for sure, but maybe this is like a psalm in which he's slowly learning about these things and slowly coming to realize what has been done. So instead of, perishing in the belly of the fish, he's all like, oh, wait, hold on. No, you actually saved me. Thanks, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty good point that I think the author is trying to make.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it, I don't know. It doesn't really sound quite like a lament. And it definitely doesn't start off as a Thanksgiving. So maybe this is one of those
Hybrids.
Yeah, is this like a hybrid thing, or is there another word for this specific one? I don't think we've seen a psalm quite like this one before.
Nope.
No.
Where they like they say like, I've done some bad stuff in the past, but now I'm all good. This isn't like those.
Right.
This is instead like taking you on a journey of learning, I guess.
Yeah.
Either way. And the Lord spoke to the fish, and it vomited Jonah out upon dry land.
So,
Nice.
So after 3 days, he prays once.
and then God talks to the fish and it pukes him up.
Yes. So yeah, it was vomited out. Now, one of the things that that Wolf noted was the motifs, the Hellenistic motifs there, and I think this whole fish one with being vomited up, he does make some references to those in there somewhere. I would have to go back and find it.
Yeah.
We're gonna split these up.
Yeah, we're going to split these up, but in the meantime, do you hear something?
I do hear something.
I hear something like a fish, maybe.
A big fish, a mighty fish.
A fish is following our.
Behold, I am your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and I want to let all you heathens and sinners know that I support this wonderful episode of Atheist Sunday School. Lawrence and Reuben try their very best to bring you the true glory of the Bible, and they need your help. They have provided links to their Patreon page and other social media just for you. Once again, my name is Jesus Christ, and this is Milwaukee Atheists. The Lord is with them. God bless.
Hello, Jesus. Thank you for that. That was really kind of you to show up. Although once again, you have taken away Reuben. Now, perhaps
Maybe been swallowed by a fish.
You know what?
Yeah,
Maybe.
His chair. If you look at his chair, behind his chair is the great fish thing about to swallow Jonah. So
Yes, you're right, Landon. That's what happened. In fact, I saw it with my own 3 eyes. Reuben was sitting right there, and then when we heard that noise, that crazy sound, and he just got swallowed up by the green screen, and we should have known it was actually the fish that did that. And now I bet you in 3 days and 3 nights, he's going to be back here just fine.
Or in a couple
3
seconds.
minutes and 3 seconds, maybe.
Closer to that. I don't know. So either way, we are now getting into chapter 3. So this, so it looks like this is going to be another little call here. God's going to be speaking to Jonah again. And you know what? Speaking of speaking to God, hey, how was the fish, Ruben?
Oh, it was great. I fried it up.
Oh,
I thought it vomited you out, and then you grabbed the fish, and you now are cooking it. Okay, that's pretty good.
so hold up. Was this fish a leviathan?
No, it was haddock.
Oh, was it good?
Yeah, it was pretty good.
All right, nice. Like time just flows differently inside
behemoth haddock.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. When shoal and the window and the fish seeing what's going on down there. So, chapter 3. Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah the second time, saying, "Arise, better, go to Nineveh, the great city, and proclaim to it the proclamation which I'm going to tell you."
Yeah, so this is basically the same thing that's being said that was said in the first chapter, except it changes one of the words. It looks like one of the words has changed. So you can probably read the Hebrew here, Ruben. So the second command is very similar to the one recorded 1:2, but the major difference.
It's L versus all.
Okay. There you go. That's the major difference.
All right, so verse 3.
Yep.
So Jonah arose and went to Nineveh according to the word of the Lord. Now Nineveh was an exceedingly great city, a 3 days walk.
Yeah, so Nineveh lays on the left bank of the Tigris, opposite of what today is the city of Mosul, at the confluence of the Tigris and the Kosor, north of the Great Zab. Archaeologists have been able to excavate the ancient ruins from the Tel Kuyunjik, but not from the neighboring Tel Nebi Yunus, which is populated. The archaeological findings show that 70 feet of debris represent one of the oldest cities in Mesopotamia, with beginnings going back to the 5th and 4th centuries. Inscriptions record its existence from the end of the 3rd century, designating it as one of the cultic places dedicated to the goddess Ishtar. Assyrian kings belonging to the Old, Middle, and Late periods contributed to the building of Nineveh, but it was Sennacherib who expanded the city for the first time into what was, for a quarter of a century, the capital of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, with palaces, temples, fortifications, and aqueducts, according to Herodotus, residing there as king of Assyria. It was here that Ashurbanipal founded the most famous of the cuneiform libraries. In 612, the Medes and Neo-Babylonians destroyed the city forever. Therefore, for our narrator and his readers, Nineveh was a power belonging to the remote past, time out of mind. Notions about the great Neo-Assyrian capital mingle with the idea of an ancient city-state. This means that it would be pointless to try and find any basis in historical fact for Nineveh's fairy tale size.
Yeah, and I think both Hoyt and Alter agree on this one, pretty much saying that this was a figurative amount of time. They were just calling it really big, which, or I guess in Hoyt's case, that is just very important. Although a 3 days walk would be kind of ridiculous there. So
maybe if he's limping from some digestion of his leg.
So a 3 day walk across.
Sure.
Yeah. So a city.
Are you saying that?
Yeah. Go
the
ahead.
3 days walk is too long or too short?
It's far too long.
Though it is noted here that 3 days would have been needed to spread news throughout the city.
Wow.
That's kind of.
Maybe he walked slow. Maybe
kind of a stretch there.
He really went slow.
But it doesn't say where the fish might have gone. I mean, maybe the fish went farther down the sea and vomited up, and he had to walk back 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't really know where he got barfed up.
So a city 90 miles across would be considerably larger than contemporary Los Angeles, and needless to say, no actual city in the ancient Near East could have been anywhere near that big. This 3 days. Sorry, what'd you say?
I don't understand that you're saying that size is 3 days walk size, or that it took 3 days to get to Nineveh.
Well, it says
because the action on verse 3 is, so Jonah rose and went to Nineveh, a 3 days walk, right? You use that sentence where it's stuck in parenthetically saying, about it being a great city, right?
Well, apparently, according to the Hebrew, it says a 3 days walk across.
Wow. Well,
the KJV just says an exceeding great city of 3 days journey.
Huh.
Yeah, so he's not only going to Nineveh, but through it.
Well, he doesn't need to be walking the entire time. He can stop. He can get something to eat. He can sleep for a while.
I guess, but calling it a 3 days walk would be just like, maybe you'd include the sleep in there, but like walking for 3 days. Either way, it's supposed to be a big city, but considering the fact that we've already seen this, I know that I'm always hesitant to point out like the motif of 3 being used repeatedly. Like, even though it does pop up a lot, it's also a pretty small number. So it's not actually that surprising that it'd be used a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Here we have another instance of 3 days.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So in conjunction with that, it feels like this would be just another exaggeration about it.
And you notice I say that in verse 4 we talk about it. I'll read that. It says, "Then Jonah began to go through the city 1 day's walk, and cried out aloud, saying, 'Yet 40 days, and Nineveh will be overthrown.'" So that clearly says that it was a 3 day walk to get to Nineveh, and it took him a day to walk around the city and cry out, 40 days. And you'll be overthrown. 40 days and you'll be overthrown. That probably made him very popular.
And also, it's noted that he doesn't say Yahweh says this. He might be getting a bit presumptuous, where he just walks in and says that in 40 days it'll be overthrown. Some interpret this as a conditional statement that if they don't change their ways, they'll be overthrown in 40 days. But it's not clear in any case.
But then, verse 5, the people of Nineveh believed in God, and they called a feast and put on sackcloth, and the greatest to the least from the greatest to the least of them.
Yeah, so that went real quick, huh? Seems almost, unbelievable entirely, actually. So the thing about 40 days more and Nineveh is overthrown. So Alter notes that the number is formulaic, as in the 40 days of the flood, the 40 days Moses spends on the mountain, and the 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. Unless we are to construe Jonah's prophecy as a highly elliptical report, it is unconditional. In 40 days, Nineveh is to be utterly devastated. With the verb overthrown, the same one that is applied to Sodom. But as the next verse makes clear, the people of Nineveh understand this dire prediction as implying a reversal of the disaster if they change their ways.
Yeah. Verse 6, when the word reached the king of Nineveh, he arose from his throne, laid aside his robe from him, covered himself in sackcloth, and sat in the ashes, or my translation says dust.
So Wolf notes that it's useless to try and identify this king with any Neo-Assyrian king belonging to the 8th century, the period of the historical Jonah, according to 2 Kings 14:25. This is obvious from the history of the city itself, and in the light of the literary genre with which we have to do here, what it tells us about this king and city is not borne out by anything in Neo-Assyrian annals.
Oops.
Yeah, and I can't I mean, I'm gonna see if I can find anything about a potential king there, but I'm not seeing it as of right now.
Verse 7, and he issued a proclamation, and it said, in Nineveh, by decree of the king and his nobles, do not let a man, beast, herd, or flock taste a thing. Do not let them eat or drink water.
Wow.
So there's going to be this a big anti-party, and verse 8 says, but both man and beast must be covered with sackcloth. Let them call upon God earnestly, that each may turn from his wicked way and from violence which is in his hands.
Yeah, so this is
both,
another...
Both man and beast must be covered.
Yeah, in sackcloth.
Beast called to God.
Yeah, this is another sign of it being satire.
Yeah.
We also find this in Judith 4:10, and according to Herodotus 9:24, a Persian cavalry unit shaved their horses and their drought animals out of grief over the death of their leader. The animals are included in the requirement to cry out to God as if they were a matter of course. The cattle especially could see it that this cry was mighty.
So we're weirdly we're forcing anthropomorphism on the animals, and not even in a sense of like portraying them as people. We're just going to make them act like people.
Yes. They'll obey the orders of people.
But it does say, let men call upon God earnestly, but they've got to, the beasts have got to be covered with sackcloth. So verse 9, who knows, God may turn and relent and withdraw his burning anger, so we will not perish.
So this is the people of Nineveh hoping not to be destroyed in 40 days.
Okay, and that was verse 9, right?
Yeah. So, yes. And so, and then ending in verse 10, and when God saw their deeds, that they turned from their wicked way, then God relented concerning calamity which he had declared he would bring upon them, and he did not do it.
So on verse 9 there, so the king's decree and action arise from desperation. He has no way of knowing what could change Yahweh's mind. Okay, so he's just trying things, I see. There is no indication that the Ninevites know about Mosaic law or any of the other teachings about Yahweh, which affirms that Yahweh will relent judgment if people respond to him. The response is actually in line with common ancient Near Eastern religions. The gods were unpredictable and humans were at their mercy. While this statement could be viewed as a statement of great faith, in reality it is likely a simple acknowledgement that the king does not know what this unknown God will do, but he still has to try. Their actions are an attempt to appease an angry deity, but they don't know whether he can be appeased. The traditional reading of this verse is as wishful thinking, translating it as a future possibility that Yahweh might turn and relent. There is a possibility that the two finite verbs turn and relent form a, I remember using this word in my Greek class, but I had a lot of trouble pronouncing it then. Hendiatus, I don't know. Form a hendiatus, be willing to turn, but such a reading is less likely since hendiatus does not typically combine two different verbal forms.
Mm.
I always had I had issues with pronouncing that one.
Yes.
But either way, I think that is that's the end of chapter 3, right?
Did you read verse 10?
Yes. I said, when God saw their deeds and they turned their wicked way, God relented concerning his calamity. And he said, oops, sorry, I guess I won't do it.
Yep.
Or something like that.
My
That may have
bad.
been my translation.
All right, so let's get into this final chapter of Jonah.
Hey, if you guys are enjoying the stream so far, drop a like, subscribe if you haven't. This episode's been, at least viewership-wise, it was going better than most others.
Yeah.
So, you know what? It really helps us out. More viewer engagement means we pop up in the algorithm more, and we get more views, we can get more subscribers, and we can do all the good stuff.
Yes. So now, chapter 4. But it displeased Jonah exceedingly, and he was very angry.
Oh. Well, maybe he's looking on it like, oh my God, what are you guys doing to your cattle?
I wanted to see Sodom and Gomorrah get whacked, and now they repent, and God says lets them off the hook. Dang.
No.
But I guess we're gonna learn about the problem. That's what it looks like.
And he prayed unto the Lord and said, I pray thee, O Lord, was not this my saying when I was yet in my country? Therefore I fled before unto Tarshish, for I knew that thou art a gracious God and merciful, slow to anger, and of great kindness, and repentest thee of the evil. Therefore now...
That's an excuse. That's a pretty good excuse. I don't think I think he was just saying like, hell no, I'm not going to go to Nineveh. And he's kind of come up with this little excuse thing.
Oh, and apparently, here's something that I think would point to a bit, definitely post-exilic here. You are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abundant in kindness. These words are a direct quotation of Exodus 34:6.
Oh. Therefore now, O Lord, take, I beseech thee, my life from me, for it's better for me to die than to live.
Oh, you know what? I feel that.
Yeah, I guess. Then said the Lord, dost thou well to be angry?
Yeah. He's upset because he just gave the Ninevites a way out.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, no, I just wanted to preach doom.
And God's like, why you mad, bro?
What a dick.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, he's mad that God didn't slaughter a city of many people, right?
Yeah, a great city.
And he makes his excuse saying, yeah, I fled to Tarsus because I knew you wouldn't do it. So, like, no, you fled to Tarsus because you just were a...
Man, Jonah did not think this all the way through.
Yep. So Jonah went out of the city and sat on the east side of the city, and there made him a booth and sat under it in the shadow till he might see what would become of the city.
All right. So he's getting all sorts of goth.
Jonah builds
I'm
a waiting shack.
I'm going to wait until God actually smites them.
Yep.
I mean, essentially.
I went through this whale and all this other stuff, and then God goes and pardons them. So,
so here's a note from Hoyt, and she's actually quoting Wolf here.
So I guess you don't need to reference Wolf there.
I guess. He notes that Jonah and Nineveh have actually exchanged roles. Nineveh was wicked in 1:2 and 3:2, yet here wicked is assigned to Jonah. And while Jonah is not described as a wicked person, he has still taken Nineveh's place in the story. Nineveh was at odds with Yahweh, and now Jonah has once again placed himself at odds with Yahweh. But, she goes on here. So, but while Wolf is correct, there is another element to the use of the issuing judgment. In 1:2, Yahweh states that for their wickedness has come up before me, and there Yahweh functions as the one who judges what is wicked. In 4:1, Jonah does the same thing. Jonah has decreed something wicked or unjust, taking on himself a role reserved for Yahweh, and even daring to label Yahweh's actions as gravely unjust. Oh, yeah, there you go. Mm-hmm. Man, dude, Jonah, okay, this is strangely entertaining, the amount that Jonah is messing up. So I really do think this is in the same vein as Esther. Because with Esther, you get all of that irony with Haman, right? Or Haman, however you pronounce it. I don't know. But now it's all on Jonah. He's trying so hard, but getting absolutely nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, he's getting it just as wrong as the Ninevites are.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Atheist Sunday School, where we do everything right, but nothing goes well.
Yeah. So these next couple verses are interesting. And the Lord God prepared a gourd and made it to come up over Jonah, that it might be a shadow over his head to deliver him from his grief. So Jonah was exceeding glad of the gourd.
Made a gourd.
Yeah, a gourd.
Mine just says plant.
Oh.
But-
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was looking at that. So apparently, this is where we get some.
Well, wait.
Okay, go ahead.
And the next verse, it says, but God prepared a worm when the morning rose the next day, and it smote the gourd that it withered.
Right. The gourd withered. Of course, King James.
Yep.
So what it says here, at least from the Hebrew, is kikayon plant. So the term appears only in this passage. Of course, the KJV renders this as gourd, which is as good as anybody's guess. However, since the plant has not been confidently identified, it seems prudent to preserve the Hebrew name in the translation. So it's a kind of plant, as far as we can tell.
Mm-hmm. A big plant.
So what verse was that? That was
I just finished verse 7.
Okay, verse 7. Okay, I gotta catch up with some of these other commentators.
Yeah. So basically, this worm kills the gourd. God sends a gourd so that Jonah can have a nice time in the shade, and then God sends a worm that kills the gourd so that Jonah can't have a nice time in the shade.
Man,
Contrast.
After all this, he gets thrown off a boat. He gets swallowed by a fish. He goes into a city that he doesn't want to go to and preaches doom, which is a dangerous thing, probably.
they convert.
And God's still fucking with them.
He throws a tantrum, but see, he goes and throws a tantrum and
Yeah.
sits down and pouts and says, I'm going to wait till God goes and smacks these people.
He threw a tantrum because God didn't destroy the place because they somehow saved themselves, or at least from the perspective of Jonah, the possibility of saving themselves, which I was mentioning before, right?
Right.
About at the for chapter 1,
Yeah.
right, where they had the possibility to defend themselves.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So, to save themselves, I guess. So, that's a problem for Jonah.
Yeah.
What a dick. Anyway.
Verse 8. And it came to pass when the sun did arise that God prepared a vehement east wind, and the sun beat upon the head of Jonah, that he fainted and wished in himself to die, and said, it's better for me to die than to live. And God said to Jonah, doest thou well to be angry for the gourd? And he said, I do well to be angry, even unto death.
Wow. What a
I'll be angry till I die.
Yep. Then said the Lord, thou hast had pity on the gourd, for the which thou hast not labored, neither madest it grow, which came up in a night and perished in a night. And should not I spare Nineveh, that great city wherein are more than 60,000 persons that cannot discern between their right hand and their left hand, and also much cattle?
Wait, hold up. So aside from the cattle, shall I not have pity for Nineveh, the great city, in which there are many more than 120,000 human beings who do not know between their right hand and their left. So they're idiots?
Mm-hmm.
Do you suppose that persons is referring to just males, because the females and kids didn't count?
It might
I don't
be.
know. I have no clue.
But also at the end there, he just throws in, and also a lot of cattle.
Yeah, a lot of cattle. So astonishingly enough, it is the city's size that is touched on first of all. This was mentioned at the beginning of the story in 1:2 and was elaborated in 3:3. Now the precise number of the city's inhabitants is given. The writer keeps his readers in suspense through new details up to the last minute. The number may well be more or less accurate estimate of the size of Nineveh, as it is known to have been in the 7th century in the period of the Neo-Syrian Empire. For the Sennacherib period, the population, that was a 704 through 681. The population has been estimated at about 300,000, according to a stele of Ashurbanipal II. 69,000, nice, people lived in Kalak, which was only half the size of Nineveh. So I think this was one of the historical details that Hoyt kind of grounded her position on, even though we've already seen she doesn't really accept her conclusion. I think that she was probably writing specifically with like a more conservative audience in mind. Mm-hmm. So I think that like she recognized the problems, but was kind of arguing for like at least like a grain of historical accuracy to make it. But then at the end, when she's all like, if you forget about the fish stuff, it's all pretty good.
Well, that's the end of the book.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the book of Jonah. So, final thoughts on the book of Jonah.
That was a hoot.
Yeah.
It seems like Jonah is kind of has an attitude problem.
Yeah.
And it also sadly enough, this first chapter has been the cause of death of a number of people on the short end of the stick, of a bunch of mariners who are having problems on their voyage and blame it on Jonah, and that person mysteriously dies. They don't typically throw them overboard, and those people died because of this tradition. So it's another case of hashtag blame the Bible to cause calamity amongst people. And it's also interesting, I think, that Jonah doesn't go and say, thus says the Lord, blah, 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 unless you blah, 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 blah thing. He just says, 40 to 40 nights, you're going to be overthrown. I think the guy has an attitude problem in general.
Yeah.
Well, he definitely has an attitude problem.
He was so pissed off that Yahweh didn't commit genocide.
Yeah, he was so mad. But yes, as Klaus is pointing out, a lot of people focus on the fish instead of the bigger theological points. So definitely universalism. It's definitely universalist, considering the fact that anyone can be saved. And in fact, this prophet guy he's really mad about it. And he just saw a whole bunch of stuff. Like he just straight up was like on the brink of death. Yeah. Essentially. And it seems like aside from the really abrupt ending, I mean, it started kind of abrupt, but it was not as abrupt as the ending. Right. The whole point is not just that everyone can be saved, but that it seems like you should at least have mercy for some of these things, at least if they don't. I don't know if the theology is more like, this isn't going to exist for very long, so you should have some mercy on it.
Yeah, aside from that, I'm not really sure what you can learn from this, because he just gets eaten by a fish and he gets spit out, he gets thrown off a boat, he hangs out outside a city for a long time. But I don't know what I'm supposed to learn from those things.
Well,
I get the
what
message
you're supposed to learn is not to run away from the responsibilities that God gives you.
Okay.
And to have compassion for other people.
All right.
Okay. Could it be that that there's more text that was lost, right? That have
hold on, Landon.
That Jonah then repents and.
Landon, you're freeze framed on your video. Can you turn it off and turn it back on?
I don't know, or just jiggle the computer around.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at like potentially some kind of.
Oh, you're back. Yeah. Okay. So the ending is very abrupt. So I would not be surprised if stuff was lost.
Yeah, this feels like a middle of a story. It doesn't have much of a beginning or an end.
And if it were being a nice thing, he'd say, "Oh, God, I'm sorry. You're right. You're great. Blah blah blah. Let me go back into the city and tell them that God has saved them," and they throw a party.
Mm-hmm. Well, it could be that it's intentionally left open-ended, right? So we don't know whether Jonah learns his lesson or not.
Yeah, so the story has reached its end, yet it is a curiously unfinished end. Does Jonah understand and accept Yahweh's disturbing action? Disturbing. This time we're on God's side, actually, as far as the story goes. And Jonah's like, this God trying to be all forgiving and not murdery.
Well, there is another interpretation. You remember the rules about prophets and false prophets.
Oh.
So by it not happening, Jonah could be considered a false prophet by the people and thus could be put to death.
This could almost be a story of a foolish false prophet.
Oh.
I mean, foolish, yes. This guy does seem right up that alley.
So you've talked about the origin of this, of when the story was done, but how did this book of text get into the canon? From what?
Oh, yeah, I can, there's a whole bunch of stuff on that.
Oh, no.
So I decided to kind of skip over it. I didn't really think it was a huge deal. The thing is the historical reality of this stuff was, of course, it really came under fire with the rise of higher criticism, or that's historical criticism in the 19th century. However, that wasn't the first time that people were questioning that kind of stuff. Even early on, before there really was a canon, people were still kind of doubting that. So, of course, we do have the reference in the alphabet of Ben Sira to this. So the book of Jonah was assigned 5th place in the Hebrew canon, probably for reasons of chronology and content. The editors knew from 2 Kings 14:23-25 that a prophet called Jonah had lived at the same time of King Jeroboam II, and the superscriptions to the collections of sayings of Hosea and Amos named Jeroboam as one of the kings of the northern kingdom of Israel, describing him as a contemporary of King Uzziah of Judah. Hosea 1:1 adds the names of his Judean successors, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. Only these three are mentioned in Micah 1:1. This makes the placing of the book before Micah comprehensible. But why does Obadiah come first? Immediately after Amos, although his sayings are just as undated as the book of Jonah. A point worth mentioning is that the prophet Obadiah was identified by the compilers and editors with the Obadiah who was steward or ruler of the household at Ahab's court in the time of Elijah, 1 Kings 18:3 onward. And this Obadiah was earlier than the Jonah mentioned in 2 Kings 14:23. Content may provide another reason. With its opening, now it once happened, Jonah 1:1 might have been read as a sequel, as such, it may have been understood in the light of Obadiah, which talks about a messenger sent among the nations. For Jonah's message, like Obadiah's, is a message to a foreign people. It definitely wasn't it doesn't directly follow. I can see the similar theme, I suppose, but it definitely doesn't directly follow. The entire thing changes.
All right, so quadruple S, I have a clarifying question for you.
Okay.
Yeah, a guy in the chat.
Yeah, I don't think it was a resurrection.
Right.
I don't.
But
Yeah, there's no textual basis for it.
Right, but
there's
I
the
have
stuff
a
about
clarifying question, though, for him. And that's that if, he died and he came back, when did he come back? Right on the shore? Or was he still, in Sheol throughout the rest of the story? Or just right there?
The thing is, the rest of it wouldn't really make sense if it was
still in Sheol. Yeah, that wouldn't make sense.
Well, if it was a kind of a resurrection story, the rest of it with Nineveh at the end there, and his kind of potential learning or not learning a lesson. Read verse 1, chapter 3. That was the one where he says arise, right? I think that was in there.
If every time they said arise in the Bible, it meant that someone was resurrected
that
from the dead.
I'm gonna check just to make sure. Don't want to misrepresent a point here.
Yeah,
No, but
get up.
But Jonah rose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. He paid the fare and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish away from the presence of the Lord.
Yeah, he rose because the
Yeah,
way that you communicate with God is through sleep and dreams, which is established in many points in the Bible.
It is, and also when you're calling on someone, it's happened before where they just say arise.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like it's not enough. It's really not enough.
Additionally, if it was a resurrection story, it would completely downplay all of the imagery that was used in Jonah's psalm that he puts forward, where the whole point was like not dying, being close to death and being saved, not being raised
This
from
is more
the
or
dead.
less a bunch of near-death experiences for him, is what I was expecting.
Well, I mean, I don't know if the rest of it would be called near death. He was certainly not happy about
While
the
I
rest
was
of
in
it.
the fish, I mean.
Yeah, while he was in the fish, yeah, absolutely. But like, yeah, you definitely can't.
You can't survive in a fish, and it's an ahistorical story.
So,
Yeah.
well,
So
that was Jonah, everybody.
yeah. I mean, I enjoyed the book.
Yeah,
It's amusing.
It definitely amusing. So I definitely don't think it's a historical reality. It's got something to it. And
I don't know the answers in Jonah. People might differ with you.
yeah. Well, it's entertaining for one of the short books.
yeah, unfortunately ends kind of abruptly, but what are you
Well,
gonna do?
because he gets put to death for being a false prophet, right?
That's it right there.
Yeah,
Just he's
sun
clapped
death.
at the end.
He gets sun death at the end.
Actually, I'm not sure the people of Nineveh would be familiar enough with the laws to put him to death for that. So
It must have been God.
yeah, he might have survived. But he was begging to be put to death.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, either way, it works out for him.
He's kind of a suicidal dude in some ways. So,
Hey, you know what? I feel that.
He's got problems.
Me
He
too.
needs to go and get some time with a therapist.
Yeah. Well, they didn't have those back then.
So, well, if they did, that would have changed everything.
Yeah, there wouldn't be these books.
There'd be other therapy books.
There would be other books. Yeah, that's for sure.
So, Landon, do you want to shill anything that you're working on? Or
Well, while we're getting this Our Favorite Universe started, my producer is still recovering from COVID, but it looks like we have some plans for being able to put things forward. Now, there is a Discord channel called Our Favorite Universe that you can join, and in there I have a bunch of things relating to science news and cooking and medical science and history and disasters and just general newsfeed. I could supply you with a
link.
A link.
Feel free.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think I'm gonna have to send you. I think when do you have to post it? Because
I mean, you can post it, and then if it doesn't allow the posting for some reason, we could probably permit it. I'm guessing.
Okay.
I guess we'll see how it goes.
Okay. Let me try and do that.
Okay.
I'll switch over to the thing there. Anyway, yes, I will try that. Just a moment here. I've got it on the different unit.
Gotcha.
And so that's a thing that's coming up. There's some. I'm going to be next week on on Odyssey Media thing. We're talking about some astronomy stuff, and that's sort of the general gist so far. Of course, there's also the chilling of stuff. We can always do things like Patreon and buy books and wish lists, that sort of thing, and T-shirts.
Absolutely.
yeah.
So yeah, Carlos won the T-shirt. Going to be sending that over, and if you want to potentially win a T-shirt, you could become a patron and
Get into the spinny wheelie.
Or you can just buy yourself a T-shirt. There's going to be pinned merchandise up there that you can click it. You can click the pinned merchandise that is being picked out by right now. You can pick it. Oh, we've got the He Is Risen shirt pinned. That's what Landon's wearing right now.
Yeah, right there. Look how great it looks. We got we got Buzzy Bee on it.
Yes, our mascot.
Apparently. Let's see. We also have
Helium is risen, lifting up a nice bee.
Yes.
we also have a wish list, an Amazon wish list.
Yeah, you can check out our Amazon wish list. Buy us books. We'll read the books. We'll read them to you.
Can add them on, we can throw them on this table. We can just use them for longer videos that we work on, the big projects.
Yes.
Yeah, it can be used for quite a lot of stuff. Let's see. And of course the link for that is in the description. Although Nightbot's been kind of posting things today. Let's see what else we got. Facebook and Twitter, free to follow us on there.
Yeah, you can follow us or not. Or you can.
Track email to
Lawrence diss track.
MilwaukeeAtheist@gmail.com.
Yes.
You can
Diss me.
You can diss Lawrence.
Tear me a new one. Can't wait.
Make sure to tell him how wrong he is about this resurrection story. That's clearly a resurrection story.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But it's got to be done in rap format.
You can send him your love letters too.
You could do that.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we got going on. And in 5 to 10 minutes. I don't know if I'm going to be doing any more 5 to 10 minute stuff. I'm definitely concentrating on like the longer things.
20-minute, 30-minute.
Yeah, something that's around where I'm at. Could be longer. That's the most of the projects that I'm working on are going to be in that length. Wow. Good job.
Just
That
fell.
sounded horrible.
Yeah. Anyways, glad that you saved that. That must have been the fish who helped you out with it. So, I think that's all the shilling, right?
Yeah. So I put in the link for it should be valid for 7 days, and if you join, I'll notice you and enter you into the Science Fan where you can see science news and medical science stuff and history and disasters and cooking and eating and news feeds and other cool stuff.
Did you post it in the chat?
Yes, it should be there. Did it show up?
Huh. Wow.
We don't see it.
Yeah, we don't see that one, unfortunately. If you so you said it should be good for 7 days, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what you could do is if you send me the link, I can make a post about it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I will do that.
All right, fantastic. I can make a post about it.
All right.
So on Friday, we are going to be reading the Testament of Solomon, or at least starting to read the Testament of Solomon. That's going to be a fun one. Lots of demons and magic and fancy stuff that you would expect to see in much of the Bible, but which doesn't really pop up.
Yeah. So that's exciting though that we're getting into that kind of stuff. It's going to be kind of a break from the stories that we've heard, I don't know, 8 times now. So,
yeah. And next week we are starting a new book, which probably will take 2 episodes, the Book of Micah.
Yes. Yeah, it'll probably
All right.
take 2.
And afterwards we'll be reading Nahum, which will only take 1.
Yeah, we're getting into we're in the very short sections here.
Yes.
Yes.
Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, I guess is the last long one. Right?
We'll be done with the Old Testament by some point in December.
Before the year's out.
Probably, yeah. Either way, we're getting there. We are certainly
And we'll be
getting
done with the New Testament before this time next year, probably.
there. Probably. Man, we have read a lot.
Yeah, we have.
This book is long.
You look at one book and you're like, we've read a lot. When actually, there's this,
Right.
and that, and that, and
bookshelf.
that whole bookshelf, and then other stuff. We've read like many thousands of pages.
That's true. Christmas themed, maybe eventually. But I'm gonna.
We threw all that out.
No, we'll have a Yule themed.
We'll get a log. That's easy.
We'll
right?
ask the Heathen Coalition to hook us up with Yule themed stuff.
That could probably work, yeah. All right. By the way, we did all the shilling. All the links to everything are in the description. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Landon, thank you once again for coming back on.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
And we will see you on Friday.